Ksoo's own father openly snitched on him as the shooter behind the crime that landed them both behind bars. Now, a new jail call between them has surfaced, and what Ksoo says to his father will leave you speechless. Forgiveness might be completely off the table. Let's break it down. The ultimate family betrayal that shocked hip-hop. Yo, when we talk about violations in the streets, there ain't nothing worse than family turning on family. But what went down in that Jacksonville courthouse on July 28, 2025 was some next-level treachery that had the whole hood shook. Abdul Robinson Sr. stepped into that witness box and did the unthinkable. He snitched on his own blood, violating every code that real ones live by. And now, a leaked jail call shows Ksoo ain't letting that slide. Honestly, can you blame him? Picture this. You sitting in that defendant chair facing life without parole, and the one person who's supposed to ride for you harder than anybody else, your own father, gets up there and tells 12 strangers that you're a cold-blooded killer. That's something that cuts deeper than any shank, some pain that no amount of commissary money can heal. Abdul Sr. had cut a deal with the feds, trading his son's freedom for his own survival like some straight-up rat behavior. The old head looked weathered as hell when he shuffled into that courtroom carrying the weight of what he was about to do. You could see it in his face, the guilt, the shame, the knowledge that he was about to cross a line that real street niggas never crossed. But when that prosecutor asked him the question that would seal his son's fate, Abdul Sr. didn't hesitate for even a second.
Now, when you watched that video of the murder across the corner, did you recognize the shooter? Who was the shooter in that video? Your son,
Damn, that silence in the courtroom must have been deafening. Here's this OG, supposedly the head of ATK, the same who allegedly ran the whole operation, pointing his finger directly at his own seed and telling the world his boy was a shooter. The irony was crazy. The same man who put his sons onto the game was now the one sending them upstate for life. See, the streets had Abdul Sr. hemmed up real tight. Homie was facing serious time as an accessory in multiple bodies, including helping his boys get ghost after they smoked Charles McCormick. The state came at him with that classic move: flip on your people and get a sweet deal, or ride it out and die in a cell. Most real niggas would choose to keep it 100 and do their time, but Abdul Sr. chose self-preservation over family loyalty. What made this betrayal even more heartbreaking was the reasoning behind it. The old man was sick, diabetes, kidney problems, heart failure, and he wanted to be around for his younger kids. He talked about wanting to make it to his daughter's daddy-daughter dance, to see his son play football. But the price for those precious moments was his oldest son's freedom, and that's some cold-blooded arithmetic right there.
They ain't even say who was the shooter in that video, and even stop for half a second, a millisecond. He shouted out Hakeem Robinson.
The defense lawyers tried to paint Abdul Sr. as a desperate old head who would say anything to save his own skin. They pointed out how his plea deal dropped his potential sentence from 60 years down to 20, eventually settling at just 76 months. That's a hell of a discount for cooperation. They argued he was a snake who chose his own survival over his son's life, but the damage was already done. The jury heard what they heard, and it came from the mouth of the person who knew Ksoo better than anybody else on this earth. When word got out about this testimony, the streets went absolutely crazy. Social media was lit up with people calling Abdul Sr. everything but a child of God. Real niggas from all over were disgusted, questioning how any father could do his own son like that. The street code is simple and clear. You never cooperate with law enforcement, especially not against your own family. That's rule number 1 in the handbook, and Abdul Sr. just threw that whole book in the trash.
There's a code, and it makes sense. It don't make no sense. All y'all niggas was lying. Y'all would tell on y'all son. Y'all would tell on who signed you. You tell on them every motherfucker. So this is why I sit back and I laugh, because, in reality, they turned the whole shit out.
The most painful part was when Abdul Sr. described his testimony as the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. This is a man who survived decades in the streets, caught bullets, buried friends, and lived through all kinds of trauma. But nothing compared to the agony of putting his own son away for life. You could see the pain eating him up inside, but he still chose to go through with it. The prosecution tried to downplay the impact of Abdul Sr.'s testimony, claiming they had a strong case with or without his cooperation. They pointed to other evidence like surveillance footage and statements from other snitches who had already flipped. But let's keep it 100. Having the defendant's own father identify him as a killer hits different than any other evidence. That's some psychological warfare that cuts straight to the bone. Watching Ksoo's reaction to his father's betrayal was heartbreaking. Witnesses described him looking stunned, shaking his head in disbelief, like he couldn't process that his own pops was the one, putting the final nail in his coffin. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving scars that would never heal no matter how much time passed. When the verdict finally came down on July 31st, 2025, the consequences of that betrayal became crystal clear. After 3.5 hours of deliberation, that jury came back with a guilty verdict, and Ksoo's world came crashing down. The young man broke down in tears when he heard guilty, covering his face as the reality of life without parole hit him like a ton of bricks. In a last-ditch effort to maintain some dignity, Ksoo took to social media to claim the system was rigged against him, posting about having an all-white 12 jurors with 3 white state attorneys with white judge, and calling Jacksonville corrupt. But the damage was done. In Florida, first-degree murder comes with a mandatory life sentence without parole, and both Ksoo and his co-defendant ATK Scotty were scheduled for sentencing on September 8th, 2025. This wasn't just about one family falling apart. This was about the complete breakdown of everything the streets were supposed to represent. When your own father becomes a snitch, when family loyalty means nothing in the face of self-preservation, what's left? The very foundation of street culture, loyalty, honor, keeping it real, all got flushed down the drain in that Jacksonville courtroom, and the ripple effects would be felt throughout the hood for years to come. The deadly chain of revenge that destroyed lives. Real talk, if you want to understand how Charles Lil Buck McCormick ended up face down in that parking lot on January 15, 2020, you gotta trace that beef back through the bodies that came before. When Ksoo allegedly ran down on Lil Buck at that shopping plaza and let that chopper sing, that wasn't some random act of violence. That was payback that had been brewing in the streets for over a year, building up pressure like a time bomb ready to explode. The whole chain of events that led to Lil Buck catching those bullets started exactly 364 days earlier, when Willie Boss Goon Addison got smoked outside Paradise Gentlemen's Club on January 16, 2019. Boss Goon wasn't just another hood nigga getting clapped. He was Ksoo's blood, his half-brother who was trying to get his life together after doing a 6-year bid for burglary and perjury. The young man had been grinding in the booth, trying to make something legitimate out of his street. Credibility. That night when they caught Boss Goon slipping was especially crazy. Homie was riding in a silver Tahoe with 5 other people, including his pops Abdul Robinson Sr., when them ops pulled up and turned that whip into Swiss cheese. They put over a dozen holes in that truck, and while everybody else survived, Boss Goon didn't make it. His father took one in the back, but lived to tell the tale, and eventually tell it in court years later. What made Boss Goon's death extra painful for the ATK crew was the timing. The had just finished performing at the club, showcasing his talent and trying to build something legitimate. He was on that positive wave, trying to leave the street stuff behind and focus on his music career. But the ops didn't give a damn about his redemption arc. They caught him when his guard was down and sent him to meet his maker. After Boss Goon got laid to rest, the street should have stayed quiet out of respect. But that's when Lil Buck made the mistake that would eventually cost him his life. This fool decided to drop a diss track that completely disrespected Boss Goon's memory and basically took credit for the hit. That wasn't just rap beef or artistic expression. That was a direct violation, a slap in the face to a grieving family, and a declaration of war wrapped up in auto-tune and 808S. In the hood, there are certain lines you don't cross, and mocking a dead man who was trying to go legitimate is definitely one of them. Prosecutors later argued that this diss track was the specific reason Lil Buck had to die. It transformed what could have remained just another street beef into a blood debt that demanded payment with interest.
I go on Facebook, a little boy just got killed in Hilltop, like 16. So I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, he had on a uniform or a gray sweater, burgundy shirt. I'm like, oh my God, like.
But before we even get to Boss Goon's murder, we gotta rewind the tape to February 25th, 2019, when 16-year-old Adrian Bibby Gaynor caught his wings at Hilltop Village Apartments. Little homie was just a shorty, still in his school uniform when they laid him down. But his death became another link in this deadly chain that was wrapping around Jacksonville's neck like a noose. Ksoo got charged with Bibby's murder too, and the pattern that emerged was straight demonic. These weren't random drive-bys or heat-of-the-moment shootings. These were calculated executions, planned-out moves designed to send messages and settle scores in a war where young black lives were the currency and Jacksonville streets were the marketplace. When Dominique Butta Barner took that plea deal and started singing like a canary, the details he revealed about how these hits went down were absolutely chilling. Barner's testimony showed that the plot to smoke Lil Buck wasn't some spontaneous decision made after a few drinks and some arguing. This was a full-scale operation with surveillance, multiple vehicles, and military-level coordination. According to what this snitch told the court, the crew did their homework, stalking Lil Buck's apartment and even using the county clerk's website to find his address. When their target left his crib, they followed him to that shopping center where he thought he was just handling handling some routine business at a staffing agency. Instead, he walked straight into a death trap that had been months in the making. The level of planning that went into this hit was some next-level street stuff. Barner testified that Ksoo had called up Raekwon Howard, a KTA affiliate, to let him know one of yo homeboys slipping before they made their move. This wasn't just about killing an enemy, it was about psychological warfare, making sure the ops knew their boy was about to get touched and there was nothing they could do about it.
For the life of me, I don't know why you would commit a murder and then go on the internet and brag about the murder. It just makes absolutely no sense.
But what made these murders even more twisted was how they got turned into content for social media and rap songs. After Lil Buck got smoked, Ksoo hopped on Instagram talking about killing an then go get my toes done, and posting videos of the victim with captions like, bye, bye, with waving emojis. That stuff wasn't just disrespectful, it was straight evil, turning a family's tragedy into entertainment for his followers. The same sick pattern played out after Bibby's murder. Ksoo allegedly flooded his Instagram with photos and videos bragging about killing a 16-year-old, and even dropped an album called Bibby Out, with pictures of dead KTA members on the cover. The level of cruelty was off the charts, taking the deaths of young men and turning them into album artwork and social media clout. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this whole situation was how it affected the victims' families. Bibby's father has spoken publicly about the pain of seeing his son constantly mocked and disrespected online, describing how every video and post about his baby takes his breath away and forces his family to relive their trauma over and over again.
Lil Bibby, I don't know Bibby. I know Adrian, I know Junior, you know what I mean? So Bibby is the name that came after, for me, after, you know what I'm saying? So I know Lil Adrian, I don't know Bibby. When I see Adrian, I see my son.
The interconnected nature of these murders created a spider web of violence that seemed impossible to escape. Each body that dropped demanded retaliation. Each retaliation sparked another response, and the cycle kept spinning out of control like a washing machine with a broken drum. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has connected over a dozen murders to this ongoing beef, with each death adding more fuel to a fire that was already burning out of control. What made this situation even more tragic was the ages of the people getting caught up in this madness. Bibby was only 16 when they smoked him, still wearing his school clothes, still trying to figure out his place in the world. Lil Buck was 23, just starting to build an adult life for himself. These weren't OGs who had been in the game for decades. They were young men who got swept up in a war that started before many of them were even old enough to drive. The psychological damage from this chain of violence went way beyond the immediate victims and their families. Community organizations have been working overtime trying to pull young people out of this lifestyle. But when murder becomes normalized and glorified through social media and rap music, it becomes almost impossible to convince kids that there's another way to live. The violence had become so routine that young started seeing it as just another part of growing up in the hood. They watched their friends get killed and turned into hashtags, saw murderers become rap stars, and learned that violence was not only accepted but celebrated and monetized. The whole moral compass of an entire generation got completely crazy, and the consequences of that are still playing out in Jacksonville streets today. But to really understand how this deadly chain reaction came to dominate the lives of so many young people, we need to go back to the beginning, to the historical roots of the conflict that gave birth to all this madness and turned Jacksonville into a battlefield where young black men kill each other for sport while the world watches and streams their music. The historic ATK versus KTA war that divided Jacksonville. Before the first shot was fired, before the first body hit the pavement, before social media turned murder into entertainment, the streets of Jacksonville were already primed for war. The beef between ATK, Ace's top killers, and KTA, Kill Them All, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was cooked up in the same poverty, neglect, and hopelessness that breeds violence in hoods across America. This wasn't just another gang beef, this was generational. Trauma playing out in real time, with young black men paying the ultimate price for disputes that started before they were even born. The spark that lit this whole inferno can be traced back to May 27, 2017, when they smoked Zion Brown. Zion wasn't just another casualty in the streets. He was Julio Fulio's blood, his 18-year-old cousin who got caught slipping during a home invasion. The who did the deed was DeAndre Jaquez Thomas, a 19-year-old youngin' who was tight with ATK and Yungeen Ace. The way they did Zion was straight vicious and senseless. The shooting also left 2 little girls wounded, innocent babies who just happened to be in the wrong place when Thomas came through with that iron. They eventually gave Thomas life without parole, but the damage was already done. The line had been crossed, blood had been spilled, and the whole city was about to feel the consequences. What made Zion's murder so significant wasn't just another young black man dying, it was how how it unified the opposition and gave them something real to be mad about. For Fulio and his KTA crew, Zion's death became their rallying cry, their reason for existing, their justification for everything that came after. The need for revenge became like a drug that they couldn't stop taking, and it would drive every move they made for years to come.
Ksoo, man. That's my brother for real, man. He been with me. He been with me every step of the way. See, he one of the ones who been with me every step of the way.
The retaliation was swift and brutal. On June 5th, 2018, they caught Youngin Ace and his crew slipping near Town Center Parkway and let them choppers loose. Ace took 8 bullets, but somehow survived what should have been a death sentence. His brother Trayvon Bullitt and his boys Royale Devon Smith Jr. and Jacoby Deshad Groover weren't so lucky. They all caught their wings that night. The message was clear. KTA wasn't playing games, and they were willing to go body for body in this war. This shooting changed everything in the game. What had been small-time beef and territory disputes suddenly became a full-blown war with real bodies dropping on both sides. Ace surviving 8 bullets made him a legend in the streets, gave him street cred that money can't buy, and provided the perfect origin story for his rap career. But losing his brother and his closest friends also filled him with the kind of rage that never goes away, the type of anger that demands blood in return. That's when drill rap became the soundtrack to the violence. Both sides started dropping diss tracks that named specific dead niggas and glorified the murders, turning real-world deaths into entertainment that got millions of views and made these young killers into rap stars. Songs like Youngin Ace's Who I Smoke became anthems for the ATK side, explicitly naming their dead ops and celebrating their murders. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office started treating these music videos and social media posts like modern-day gang graffiti. They compared them to the territorial tags that gangs used back in the day to mark their territory and provoke their enemies. But unlike old-school graffiti that might reach a few hundred people in the neighborhood, these digital provocations could go viral instantly, reaching millions of people and amplifying the disrespect on a global scale.
Shit, he doing what kids do. He want attention. He's seeking out for something. And if he say he killed him and all of something, it's like he looking out, he reaching out for somebody to come get him.
The psychological warfare became just as important as the actual shooting. Social media turned into a 24/7 battlefield where gang members would diss dead ops, threaten future violence, and keep old beefs alive. The constant stream of disrespectful content made sure that grievances never had time to heal or be forgotten. Every day brought new posts, new videos, new reasons to stay mad and plot revenge. What made this beef especially destructive was how it consumed entire bloodlines. ATK was basically a family operation run by Abdul Robinson Sr., who brought his sons into the game from jump. This created a situation where fathers and sons, brothers and cousins were all caught up in the same deadly cycle, making it nearly impossible for anyone to walk away or break free from the violence. The territorial nature of this beef also can't be ignored. ATK and KTA weren't just rival gangs. They represented different hoods and different ways of life within Jacksonville. The conflict became about defending your block, your family, your whole identity against perceived threats from across town. It wasn't just personal anymore, it was tribal. The economic factors behind this war also played a huge role in keeping it alive. Most of these young niggas came from poverty and broken homes, where the drug game and gang membership offered the only real path to money and respect. When you combine that economic desperation with the glamorization of gang life through rap music and social media, you create the perfect storm for violence. The community impact of this beef went way beyond the gang members themselves. Innocent people like Damon Rothermel, a 50-year-old Navy veteran, got killed by stray bullets during shootouts between the crews. Families all over Jacksonville started living in fear, keeping their kids inside, changing their daily routines to avoid getting caught up in somebody else's beef.
To the rappers that talk about Lil Adrian, thank you. Keep his name alive. And just know that your life is precious too. So just like he can be gone, you can too.
Law enforcement found themselves fighting a new kind of war, where violence could be planned and promoted through social media in real time. While cops could monitor posts and videos for evidence, the speed at which conflicts could escalate online made it almost impossible to prevent violence before it happened. By the time they identified threats, it was usually too late to stop the bloodshed. The women in these crews also played a bigger role than people realized. While the men were doing the shooting, the women were often on social media, keeping the beef alive, sharing information about enemy movements, and making sure sure old grudges never got forgotten. This created a 24/7 environment where conflicts never had a chance to cool down or fade away. The drill rap scene also created crazy economic incentives that made violence profitable. Young dudes realized that the more violent and disrespectful their content was, the more views and followers they could get. This created a situation where murder literally became a business model, where killing your enemies could launch your rap career and put money in your pocket. The psychological damage from living in this environment was devastating. Many young people in affected communities developed PTSD symptoms, struggling with anxiety, depression, and survivor's guilt as they watched their friends and family members get killed around them. Violence became so normalized that many couldn't imagine any other way to live.
It's like a cycle, man. When does it end?
When they put the guns down. They got to put the guns down, pick a book up, you know, like y'all smart enough to caught that weapon back, but
the beef showed no signs of slowing down, even as the body count kept rising. The 2024 murder of Julio Fulio in Tampa proved that this war was far from over, with each death just adding more fuel to the fire. The arrest of 4 suspects connected to ATK and the 1200 gang in connection with Fulio's murder showed that the conflict had evolved and expanded, drawing in new players while maintaining the same deadly logic of revenge and retaliation. What started as neighborhood beef had metastasized into something much bigger and more destructive, a generational curse that consumed entire families and communities. The ATK-KTA war became more than just gang violence. It became a cultural phenomenon that influenced how young people across the country viewed conflict, loyalty, and success. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.